Hey there Reddit, I'm about to share a pretty long story with you all and there's a bunch of stuff you need to know to get the whole picture. So, let's dive in. I'm going to talk about my ex-girlfriend, Emma. Back when we first got together, I was 23 and she was 24. We were both in college at the time and we hit it off pretty well, staying together for around 4 years. After we both finished college, we even decided to end things between us, and she didn't really tell me why. At first, when I saw her in college, she was a year ahead of me and seemed way out of my league, so I never had the guts to make the first move. Lucky for me, she did. She was the one who asked me out, told me she loved me 6 months into our relationship, and even suggested we live together after we graduated. Emma was an amazing girlfriend in a lot of ways, but I'm not going to lie. She had her issues. I'm saying this in a joking way, but honestly, she was pretty insecure. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it was because I wasn't too forward or proactive in our relationship. But she would get really jealous and didn't like it whenever I talked to other girls, no matter who they were. So after a couple of fights, I actually ended up cutting ties with all of my female friends. And trust me, this wasn't a small deal. These weren't just casual acquaintances. Some of these friendships went way back, even before college, stretching over 5 years. But at the time, making Emma happy and keeping our relationship smooth felt like the top priority, so I made that tough call. Looking back, it was a pretty intense decision, but love can make you do some pretty unexpected things. Fast forward to now, and life's taken a whole new direction. Emma's no longer part of my life, and I've married someone who's the complete opposite when it comes to trust and friendships. My wife is super cool about me having friends who are girls. She understands that trust is a foundational element of our relationship, so I've reconnected with all those old friends I had to let go of because of Emma. It's been great catching up and rebuilding those connections. But let's go back a bit to when Emma was in the picture. It wasn't just my friendships with women that got the axe. Even my nights out with the guys were a big no-no. Emma had this idea in her head that a boys' night out was just code for going to bars, getting wasted, and flirting with other women. It felt pretty unfair, especially since these outings were just about catching up and having a good time with friends, nothing more. The control didn't stop there. Emma pretty much wanted me to be with her and only her all the time. It was like she had this fear of me being out of her sight, which boiled down to her insecurities. I understand now that those demands were far from normal, but back then I was so wrapped up in my feelings for her that I couldn't see the red flags. I genuinely believed that what we had was special, and her constant declarations of love and statements about not being able to live without me just fed into that belief. It's strange looking back, realizing how love blinded me to the point where I couldn't see the unhealthy aspects of our relationship. It was a learning experience for sure, one that taught me a lot about love, trust, and the importance of maintaining a sense of self even in a relationship. Emma had this thing where she couldn't picture her life without me in it despite all the crazy stuff going on. I stuck around. Why? Because I had this dream of marrying her and spending our lives together. That was my goal, my end game. But as time marched on, sticking by her side got tougher and tougher. She started getting more and more suspicious over the tiniest things, and it felt like she was always on edge with me. Once we moved in together, my personal space basically vanished. I mean, she was constantly checking my phone, keeping tabs on where I was, and if I didn't keep her in the loop about my every move, she'd threaten to lock me out of our place. So yeah, by the time things came to an end, our relationship had spiraled into something pretty toxic. And yet, I somehow found the strength to stay with her through all of that. But here's the kicker. After all that, she was the one who ended things with me. And it wasn't over some big dramatic event. It was a minor misunderstanding that blew up. One day, my sister Olivia, who's 32, decided to drop by unannounced. Usually, she'd give me a heads up before coming over, to avoid any drama with Emma, making sure Emma didn't jump to conclusions and think I was up to no good. But this time, Emma wasn't home when Olivia came by. This visit from my sister, something so simple and innocent, ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back. It's weird to think how something so minor could lead to the end of a relationship that had weathered so much. But that's exactly what happened. My staying through all the toxicity, the constant surveillance, and the threats of being locked out, none of it mattered in the end. Emma's insecurities and the pressure they put on our relationship were like a ticking time bomb. And my sister's unexpected visit was the spark that set it off. Emma had this double standard where she could hang out with her friends freely, but I was stuck under a microscope, unable to even breathe without her say-so. The day everything fell apart, Emma was out visiting a friend, something I was supposedly cool with, no questions asked. Meanwhile, my sister Olivia decided to swing by unexpectedly, catching me totally off guard. In the whirlwind of surprise and catching up, it didn't even cross my mind to shoot Emma a text about Olivia's visit, which was something I normally would have done to avoid any misunderstandings. Olivia and I ended up spending a good 2 hours just talking and reconnecting. It was great honestly until her phone rang with a work emergency and she had to rush off. In her haste, she left her lipstick behind on the couch. It was such a small, easy to miss thing that neither of us noticed it. Fast forward a bit and Emma comes home, all smiles until she plops down on the couch and immediately jumps up with the lipstick in hand. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. Trouble was brewing. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. The way she held that lipstick, her expression changing from happy to stormy, I knew I was in for it. Despite knowing the truth, I realized convincing her was going to be an uphill battle. I didn't waste a second trying to explain, hoping honesty would prevail. I told her straight up that Olivia had stopped by, left in a hurry because of work, and must have accidentally dropped her lipstick. But deep down, I knew the odds were stacked against me. Emma's trust issues and insecurities had already put our relationship on thin ice, and this little tube of lipstick looked like it was about to be the hammer that shattered everything. When I tried to explain the situation to Emma, laying out the details about Olivia's unexpected visit, and the rush that led her to forget her lipstick, I might as well have been talking to a wall. Emma wasn't having any of it, and her reasons were like a 1-2 punch that knocked any hope of understanding right out of the air. First off, she pointed out that Olivia usually sends a heads up in our group chat, a chat that includes Emma, Olivia, and me, before dropping by. This time, there was no message, no warning. That was strike one in Emma's eyes. Strike two was even more personal. She couldn't wrap her head around the idea of Olivia applying makeup in our place. Olivia wasn't exactly known for her love of cosmetics, according to Emma, so the mere presence of the lipstick seemed like incontrovertible evidence of foul play. Emma's reaction was beyond anything I could have anticipated. She didn't just get mad. She went full-on berserk. We're talking a level of anger that was downright scary. She started yelling, hurling curses my way as if she was trying to hurt me with words, but she didn't stop there. She began to physically express her rage, throwing cushions around the room as if they were to blame for her fury. Then she moved on to books, sending them flying off the shelves, creating a scene of chaos and destruction. It was like watching someone transform into a person I no longer recognized, all because of a simple misunderstanding and a misplaced item. The intensity of her reaction was a stark reminder of how deep her insecurities ran, and how those insecurities could erupt into a volcanic display of anger over something so small, yet so misunderstood. The situation escalated to a point I never thought possible when Emma, in her fury, grabbed the TV remote and hurled it straight at me. Reacting on instinct, I managed to dodge it, but that moment was a stark wake-up call. It was crystal clear I needed to remove myself from this volatile situation immediately. So, I made a beeline for our bedroom and locked myself in, seeking refuge from the storm of anger outside. Trapped without my phone, I was isolated, left to wait out the tempest of accusations and screams alone. It felt like an eternity confined. In that room, listening to Emma's rage-filled voice piercing through the door, her accusations of betrayal echoing in my head. I won't lie, fear had taken a firm grip on me by then. After what seemed like hours, the house fell into an eerie silence. Mustering every ounce of bravery I had left, I ventured out of my temporary sanctuary to find the coast clear. Emma was nowhere to be seen, the door left wide open as if in her haste she'd forgotten to close it. I took some time, trying to process everything, hesitant to reach out to her, thinking maybe she needed some space to cool off, perhaps taking a walk to clear her mind. However, as the clock ticked past midnight and there was still no sign of her, worry began to gnaw at me. Deciding to bridge the silence, I attempted to call her, only to be met with the immediate realization that my calls wouldn't go through. It didn't take long to piece together that she had blocked my number. Panic mixed with confusion as I tried to text her, only to face the same fate, blocked there as well. The gravity of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just a cooling off period. Emma had taken definitive steps to cut me out, leaving me in a limbo of worry, confusion, and a deep sense of loss over how things had spiraled so disastrously out of control from a simple misunderstanding. The aftermath of that explosive confrontation with Emma was like being caught in a storm with no shelter in sight. When she hurled the TV remote at me, it was a clear sign that things had spiraled way beyond a simple argument. Dodging that remote was the moment I knew I had to distance myself, so I bolted to our bedroom and locked myself in. trapped in there without my phone. I was cut off from the world, left to listen to Emma's furious accusations and screams. It was a terrifying hour, to say the least. Eventually, the storm outside the door quieted down, and I ventured out, only to find Emma gone and our home eerily silent with the door left wide open. I didn't reach out to her, thinking maybe she needed some time to cool off, but as hours turned into midnight and she still hadn't returned, worry crept in. Attempting to contact her proved futile. I was blocked on her phone, her texts, and all social media. It was as if she had decided to erase me from her life in the blink of an eye. Reaching out to her friends turned out to be a dead end too. They had joined the blockade, leaving me isolated and bewildered. Weeks of trying to pierce this sudden silence from her side ended in the harsh realization that Emma did not want to be found, at least not by me. The following months were a blur of going through the motions of life without truly living. Work became my only escape from the emptiness that greeted me at the door of the apartment we once shared. I clung to the hope that Emma might come back, that staying in our apartment would somehow lead her back to me. But as one year turned into a new chapter without her, I had to face the reality that it was time to move on. Moving out was like closing a book without knowing the ending. The lack of closure haunted me, turning what we had into a chapter of my life filled with unanswered questions and what-ifs. The journey through the aftermath of our breakup taught me about the harsh realities of love, loss, and the process of moving forward without closure. It was a period marked by deep reflection and the slow, painful acceptance that some stories in our lives might end without a proper goodbye. Navigating the aftermath of my tumultuous relationship with Emma was like walking through a never-ending night. I had closed myself off, especially from forming connections with women, out of a misguided sense of loyalty to what Emma and I had. It felt like engaging with someone new would somehow betray the memory of us. But then, Sarah entered my life, changing the course of my journey in ways I couldn't have predicted. Sarah was a colleague at work, and from the start, her kindness stood out. She wasn't just nice to me, her warmth extended to everyone around her. Beyond her undeniable beauty and intelligence, it was her radiant personality that truly caught my attention. Despite the walls I had built around my heart, Sarah's presence started to make them crumble, and I found myself falling for her. After swearing off relationships following the disaster with Emma, Sarah made me believe in the possibility of love again. We've been together for almost 4 years now, happily married for 2 of them, and I can honestly say I've never been happier. Emma became a distant memory, a chapter I thought was closed forever until she unexpectedly resurfaced in my life. It had been 7 years since she walked out on me over what was essentially a trivial misunderstanding, but there she was, suddenly standing at my doorstep, ringing our doorbell on a quiet weekend at home with Sarah. Opening the door to find Emma on the other side was like being hit by a wave from the past. All those years of pain, confusion, and eventually healing momentarily flashed through my mind. It was a reminder of how far I've come and the new life I've built with Sarah, a life filled with love and understanding, far removed from the toxicity that once consumed me. Emma's reappearance brought back old memories, but it also reinforced the gratitude I feel for the present and the person I've become thanks to Sarah's love and support. Before I could even register what I was seeing in front of me, she dragged the little boy around 7 right in front of me and demanded that I pay 7 years of child support immediately. She completely tore into me before I even had a chance to speak and started yelling at me about how she had spent the last 7 years of her life trying to track me down so our son could finally have a father. I just stood there silently while she yelled at me, accused me of being an absent father, and demanded that I pay child support to her and cough up the amount that I had managed to avoid for the last 7 years. I had no idea how to respond to any of that and just stood there like an idiot while she continued to scream at me. Obviously, it was not my fault. I had even waited for her to come back for 1 year after she had left abruptly. She was the one who had abandoned me in our relationship, and I was 100% sure that it was not even my son who she brought along with her. The reason I was not saying anything was because I was literally too shocked to say a word. So here's the deal. I had just stepped out for a few minutes, not too long, and my friend Sarah noticed I was missing. She got curious about what was going on and decided to check it out. That's when things got really interesting. Imagine this. Sarah walks out and sees my ex, Emma, right there. It was like a scene from a movie where everything goes slow motion for a second. Emma looked like she saw a ghost or something. Her face went all white and it was clear she knew she was in big trouble. Now, I didn't catch on right away what was happening, but it was obvious Emma wasn't feeling great about seeing Sarah. Sarah was just as shocked to see Emma. Before I could even open my mouth to say something, Sarah and Emma started going at it like they were in a boxing ring, but with words instead of fists. They were yelling so much I couldn't even understand what they were fighting about. But it was obvious they knew each other from before, and whatever was happening, it wasn't good. There I was, standing there, not making a sound, trying to piece together what was happening. Kind of like when you walk into a movie halfway through and have no clue what's going on. The little boy was there too, just as confused as I was. Then Sarah decided she had enough. She pulled out her trump card and threatened to call the cops on Emma if she didn't leave. Emma was clearly not happy about this. She looked mad enough to spit fire but knew she had to go. So she threw some more angry words our way and left, giving us the kind of look that could freeze lava. That's the whole crazy scene, like something out of a drama show where you're just standing there, trying to figure out why everyone is so upset and what's going to happen next. When she heard that Sarah threatened to call the cops again, and I'm not even kidding, Emma literally made a run for it. She grabbed her son as soon as Sarah mentioned the cops and got out of there as quickly as she could. I had no idea what just happened, but I figured that Sarah would tell me everything after Emma left. Now, this is where things took a really weird turn, because as soon as Emma left, Sarah turned towards me and started screaming at me, saying things like, "How could you do this to me? And I can't believe you hid this from me." I still didn't say anything and just stood there looking at her really confused because that's how I felt. I was really confused and the things she was accusing me of also did not make any sense to me. She was acting as if I had hidden my relationship with Emma from her on purpose or something. But I had not done that. I had always been very open with Sarah and told her everything about my ex, so I did not understand why she was reacting the way she was. The only thing that I hadn't done was show her a picture of Emma ever. But that wasn't on purpose. It was mostly because I had lost my phone before I moved into my new house and had all my pictures with Emma on it. So when I lost that, I lost a lot of pictures that I had with her. I had also deleted most of my pictures with her off my social media because it was a very painful reminder of what our relationship used to be and how she had just disappeared without an explanation. So to sum it up, I deleted my pictures with her on my social media, and then I lost my phone. So I lost all the pictures that I had with her because I hadn't backed them up anywhere else either. I never tried to get them back because I just thought that it was a good thing that I didn't have any pictures with her anymore, since it just meant that one less thing that would remind me of her. Sure, we had a couple of group photos that was still up on my friends' social media accounts, but I made them take it all down because I didn't want to see myself with her anymore. I wouldn't have shown those pictures to Sarah had she ever asked for it, but she didn't, and it just seemed like too much work to go digging for group photos or photos of me and Emma to show to Sarah, when she didn't even seem interested in seeing the woman. So I never got around to showing Sarah how Emma looked after that incident. Sarah said that she wanted to leave and go live with her parents for a while, so that she could cool down and clear her head before she came back, in spite of me begging her to stay. She still left because she said that she just did not want to be in the same room as me for a while, and really needed her own space to deal with this. I didn't even know what this was, because she did not give me an explanation, and it just felt like a repeat of whatever had taken place to me and Emma. I was devastated for that entire day. And it wasn't until the next day that I finally made some calls to try and figure out what exactly was going on. I called her parents first, but they told me that I should have told them about Emma before, instead of just bringing it on her like this. They Friday me for a while, and then disconnected the call without giving me any explanation. So then I called Sarah's older sister, my sister-in-law, who was the only other person likely to have an explanation. I was completely lost and she was my last hope. So when she answered my call, I wasted no time in explaining what had happened. And that's when she told me the real story of how Sarah and Emma knew each other. So apparently Emma and Sarah were cousins. Emma's real name was Cynthia. They're not her real names. I'm just using similar examples, which was something I had never used to refer to her, which is why Sarah had never made the connection. Apparently, Emma had always been a big bully who had pretty much ruined Sarah's childhood. Things had been bad between them for a while. But it all came to a head on Sarah's 18th birthday. Emma hooked up with Sarah's longtime boyfriend of almost 3 years. My in-laws were pissed, and Sarah's mother, Emma's mother's sister, got into a huge fight over Emma's behavior. Obviously, both parents took their own kid's side, and so their families stopped speaking to each other. They were completely cut off from one another. But the bullying did not end there because Emma decided that she was going to take revenge on her cousin by spreading nasty rumors about her online. It got to a point where their parents had to get involved all over again. And this time Emma finally decided that she was going to leave Sarah alone, but only because her parents had told her to cut it out. That was the last time the two cousins spoke to each other, and finally they met about a couple of days ago because of me. After the phone call with my sister-in-law, I finally figured out why Sarah had been so mad when she saw Emma at our door. Apparently the meeting with Emma or Cynthia as Sarah knew her had brought up painful memories for both of us. I spoke to her after that phone call, and I guess my sister-in-law must have talked to her because she finally talked to me instead of just letting the phone ring. I told her that I understood where she was coming from, but it wasn't exactly my fault that we hadn't been able to find out about this common link between us, mostly because she'd never asked or shown an interest in Emma, and rightfully so, since it was all in the past anyway, and she was the future for me. Had she asked me about Emma even once, then I would have instantly shown her a picture, and we wouldn't have had to wait for so long to find out about this connection between us. I tried to explain my side of the story to her rationally, but for some reason she still thinks that I am the bad guy here, and that I should have more about my past relationships. So she would have asked me about it as well, and then we would have been able to uncover this sooner. I just couldn't see how any of this was my fault, and I told her so as well. So she got really mad at me, and stopped speaking to me after telling me that I was being stupid and self-involved. She then told me that she had a horrible history with Emma and she expected me to understand and respect that, to which I replied that I had a horrible past with her as well, but I didn't see Sarah trying to be understanding of that. I guess that really offended her because she told me that I won the Olympics for having the worst past ever, and then she hung up. Since then she has not been responding to any of my calls or texts, and I feel like I really screwed up here. My wife usually never loses her cool like this, so this was definitely a very touchy and sensitive subject for her. But I feel like she needs to realize that this is a sensitive thing for me as well. So it's not really fair to put the entire blame on me when I don't even understand what my fault here was exactly. I'm just glad that I haven't heard from Emma yet, because I'm sure that if she continues to try and get involved in my life, then this mess will only get bigger. Anyway, I too for not telling my wife enough about my toxic ex-girlfriend. Update 1. Hi guys. So first of all, thank you all for the comments that advised me on what to do here. I'm really thankful for everyone who has something to say. And for those of you who wanted to know if my wife had ever mentioned anything about the bullying before, no, she had not. She had never told me that she had been bullied relentlessly in the past. And I only found out about that part of her after the phone call with my sister-in-law. It wasn't my fault, I know, but I still took the initiative and decided to go see my wife at her parents' place. I wanted to make this relationship work, and I knew that if I wanted to be with her, then I would have to go and set things right, even if it wasn't my fault, because it was us versus the problem and not her versus me. Yesterday, I finally visited her after almost a week of not speaking to each other. Both my in-laws and Sarah were pretty surprised to see me there, but I didn't wait for them to say anything. As soon as the door had been opened, I went straight to Sarah and gave her a big bear hug. She was taken aback, but she hugged me back and we just hugged for a few minutes before we even said anything. This last week had been tough for both of us, and we knew we just wanted to be together. Who was right and who was wrong didn't even matter anymore. As soon as I broke away from the hug, she apologized to me and started crying immediately because apparently she had thought that she had lost me forever due to the meltdown that she had after Emma's visit that day. Also because of the way she had been behaving after she left the house. She acknowledged that she had been totally unreasonable and irrational in dealing with the situation and just kept apologizing constantly. Her parents and I consoled her and calmed her down as she sobbed profusely. I was happy to see that she had realized that the way she had been acting was a little unfair to me. But at the same time, I also felt guilty for not reaching out to her earlier, since that is what really caused her to break down when I finally visited her yesterday after a while. Once we talked things out, she packed up her stuff to come back home with me. And here we are, back home together. I wouldn't say that things have gone back to normal, but we're working on it and trying to make sense of everything that has happened in the last week, including Emma's visit, which we still haven't been able to get to the bottom of. But we'll find out what that was all about as well. Update 2. Hey guys, so we finally found out what Emma was here for. No prizes for guessing that it was for money, which she had made very clear to us as soon as she arrived by demanding that I pay child support for a kid that barely seemed or felt like my own. Sarah and my sister-in-law made several phone calls to get to the bottom of what was happening with her, since their families were not on speaking terms and had been for several years, and they found out that the kid was not mine, obviously. But she had been dating some guy for a couple of years. In fact, I think she had even been two-timing me for the last couple of months of our relationship. I don't have any proof for it, but it would sure make sense because she broke up with me over something really petty, and then just cut me out of her life randomly like I was nothing to her. So it would add up if she had already another guy lined up to take my place after she broke up with me. She was probably already pregnant by the time she left me and she just needed a way out. The incident with my sister was the most convenient way for her to leave. Most people in her family were aware of her relationship with the other guy, but I was forbidden from speaking to her family unless she was with me, so I never found out about it and never would have had. She'd not made the terrible decision of showing up to my doorstep just to intimidate me into giving her money. As it turns out, the other guy had dumped her a couple of months ago, and since she had quit working after she had met the other guy and had her baby, she didn't really have any savings of her own and was running short on money. He'd done the same thing to her that she had done to me, just disappeared without any explanation. And now she was struggling to make ends meet. Her parents had refused to help her because they wanted to save enough to retire, and they wouldn't be able to do so if they started supporting her and her kids all of a sudden, which is just crazy selfish, but it explains why she was so desperate. None of her family has heard from her after she ran into Sarah at my house, but I'm sure that somebody will find and either try to help her or just report it to the cops, because from what I'm hearing, she has already been scamming a few people out of cash. Now these are all just rumors, but they might as well be true because after what she tried to pull with me, I wouldn't really put it past her. Update 3. So it's a late update, but Sarah and I have decided to join couples counseling as well as individual therapy because I don't think we are dealing with her past as well as we thought we were. Just one appearance from Emma has sent our lives crashing and burning. We couldn't let that happen again, so that's why we made the decision that we made. As for Emma, we heard from a couple of relatives that she was now living with another guy whom she had met online just a few days ago, but he was already smitten with her and had offered to let her move in. Her parents were inconsolable because of how she had been acting, and even more so as she had told them that they were not allowed to meet their grandson anymore, not to take her side. But honestly, what were her parents even expecting? They had turned her away when she needed them, and now they expected her to just be fine with it. That's just ridiculous. They had always enabled her behavior, be it with me or with Sarah. Her parents weren't pleasant people, and clearly neither was she. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and she's living proof of it. Sarah and I just feel bad that the poor kid has to suffer the consequences of. Sarah and I just feel bad that the poor kid has to suffer the consequences of her bad decisions.